In this video, I'm gonna talk about one of my absolute favorite techniques in the world, and that is the drop shot. A drop shot to me is one of the best tools that we have as an angler to go out there and catch a lot of fish and some really big fish. And the best thing about a drop shot, you can throw it in shallow water, in deep water, clear water, muddy water, smallmouth, spotted bass, largemouth, and you can catch a lot of fish on the thing. Now we're getting ready to come into the summer. I tend to use a drop shot year round, but in the summer I use it even more. And in this video, I want to talk about three kind of big tips that I think will help you to catch more fish on a drop shot. Now, before we get into the video, this one is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing, but more specifically, the Fin Fishing Sun Glove. This has been a really big hit, and I finally just got these things back in stock. A lot of you guys have been asking about the Sun Glove, and so they're in stock and they're on sale. I have them marked down from $22 to $17. So if you guys want to restock up on some of these Sun Gloves, or maybe you just want to try them for the first time, they're going to help protect your hand not only from the sun, but also from those line cuts. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Those cuts that the line, especially braid, will give you right in those creases. This does help you to protect from that. So if you guys want to help support the channel, pick you up some Sun Gloves. They are on sale right now. All right, let's talk about the drop shot. Truly one of my absolute favorite techniques. I was using a drop shot specifically in the first top 10 that I ever had in the Bassmaster Opens. And I just remember I was always falling in love with that bait, but I really was like, man, this thing is not only can you get a lot of bites on a drop shot, but you can catch some really big fish. And I think that that's a little bit of a misconception with the bait. Some guys think it's just a bait to go out there and get a lot of bites, but it can catch some really big ones. Actually, matter of fact, I fished a tournament on Lake Chickamauga back in the day. The biggest fish I caught during the entire week on a drop shot with 10-pound line. I fished another tournament on the James River, and the biggest fish I caught throughout that entire week, although I was flipping and frogging, came on a drop shot. It was a 7-pounder with 8-pound test. So guys, a drop shot catches really big fish. Now, I want to talk about three kind of big tips when it comes to fishing a drop shot that I think some of these are mistakes I know that I have made over the years, and maybe you are even making them too. But let's talk about mistake number one, and that is, or tip number one, really, and that is just do not overwork your drop shot. I think that when I have been in the boat with anglers who are newer to a drop shot, or even guys who have fished a lot, what I tend to see a lot of anglers do is cast that drop shot out, typically with a spinning rod, and you will see them really kind of aggressively working that bait. As they're kind of dragging it down there on the water, they're kind of twitching it and making that thing dance all over the place. And I'm not saying that that isn't going to get you bites from time to time, but if you think about a drop shot, to me, a drop shot is a finesse application. And we'll talk about it in a power situation here in just a minute. But if a bass is going to eat your bait while it's dancing all over, while you're kind of aggressively working it, then they probably would also bite other baits that are also more aggressive. Maybe ones that you could even work a little bit faster. Now, can you absolutely catch fish this way? Yes. But what I have found is there are certain days out there on the water where simply casting that bait out and just kind of dragging it slow across the bottom, very slowly, is going to yield you the most bites. I mean, you can throw some subtle kind of pumps in there, but you're not aggressively twitching the thing. And I've actually seen days on the water where that has been the difference between catching fish and not catching fish. A lot I've seen this for smallmouth, but I've also seen it for largemouth, where just really casting that thing out and dragging it across the bottom is going to get you a lot more bites. Now, with that being said, I also want to talk to you a little bit about swimming a drop shot. You know, this is another way of working the bait, but this again is a technique that you don't hear a lot of guys talk about. It's definitely been put out there. But in this situation, when I swim a drop shot, I'm typically going to do it with a small finesse style soft plastic. What I really like to, a finesse style swim bait, soft plastic. What I really like to do a lot is, you know, everybody knows the Fat Impact Kitech swim bait. It's one of the most popular ones out there. But one that Kitech also sells is that little Easy Shiner. I think that's what it's called. Something Shiner, Easy. I think it's called the Easy Shiner. It's a very thin profile swim bait. It also has a lot smaller like boot tail on the back. It just does a lot more subtle action. And that to me is one of the best baits to use on a swimming drop shot rig. I'm literally just going to nose hook that bait. I'm going to cast that thing out there, and then I'm going to let it hit the bottom, and then I'm going to just slowly reel the bait in. So you're keeping your bait, you know, about 1 foot, 2 foot off the bottom as you are reeling that bait in. And it's just a great, very finesse style of way at catching a lot of bass. I've seen days, like I said earlier, where that will be one of the only things that catches a lot of bass. So the big thing with working a drop shot, don't overly aggressively work it. Sure, you can catch fish doing that, but I really think if you slow down with that bait, you will catch even more. All right, let's talk about number 2 big tip, and that is using a drop shot in a non-finesse style. And what I'm really referring to here is the Bubba shot is what it's called, also known as the power shot. That's what I kind of grew up learning what it was called. And this is when you actually learn it or use a drop shot in a more power application, when you're using heavier equipment. And what I do a lot of times is I'm going to flip and pitch a power drop shot. So I'm going to take my typical flipping setup, whatever that may be for you, flipping and pitching setup, but I'm going to rig it up with a drop shot. And usually this is with a 3/8 ounce weight I like to use a lot, typically with about a 2 to 4 inch leader, and then my bait, and usually a big flipping hook is what I'm using. And basically you're fishing a drop shot, but you're fishing it on that power shot or that drop shot, that heavy equipment. And where I like to fish this is when I am fishing heavy cover, but on kind of softer bottoms. There's typically a lot of hard bottom areas are best when it comes to bass fishing, but there are situations where you are fishing more of a muddy bottom or a silty bottom, and there's still bass in those areas. For example, lily pads. A lot of lily pads don't always grow on hard bottoms. You will be in big lily pad fields where that bottom is a little bit softer. And what I've realized a lot is that bass don't always like to go on the bottom to pick that bait up off of that silty bottom. So having a small drop shot with you know, a 4-inch leader just keeps that bait off the bottom enough where a bass just can easily suck it in. Now, with that being said, again, you're fishing heavy cover. Lily pads are no, you don't want to mess with lily pads with light line. I've done it, it can work, but if I can get away with using 20-pound fluorocarbon in that situation, or even straight braid in some situations, I'm going to do it. It's going to give me a good presentation to get into where that fish is at, but keep that bait off the bottom. Another thing another place that I like to do this is when I'm fishing like heavier wood cover on mud bottoms. Across the country, wood cover can be really, really good. I mean, your typical laydowns, but laydowns aren't always on, you know, a chunk rock style bank. A lot of times they're on muddy banks, you know, mud bottom banks. And in those situations, again, that Bubba shot, that power shot is a great thing to pick up. Now, the last thing that I want to talk to you guys about is actually your leader length. This is something that I have found to be very, very important on some days and not important at all on other days. And I think that this is what makes bass fishing a little bit confusing and a little bit just all over the place at times, because there are so many days out there on the water where it doesn't matter what you throw, it doesn't matter anything. You could throw a purple colored lizard down to a green pumpkin spinner bait or whatever it may be. The bass are just active, they're gonna bite it, right? But when you are fishing in highly pressured situations, I have seen that leader length can make a big, big difference. And sometimes you'll find that smaller leaders, like 3-inch leaders, 4-inch leaders. And when I'm talking about leaders, I'm talking about the distance between your bait and your weight on a drop shot. So there are days when having a very small leader, I've seen this a lot in the springtime. Those small leaders can help you to get a lot more bites. Bass sometimes are just relating closer to the bottom, hugging the bottom, and I think that that helps you to get some bites. Now, on the flip side, I have seen days, especially in the summer, especially in the late summer, where if you're not fishing a really long leader, I mean 2 foot, 3 foot in length, you will not get the bites that you could have got. And a lot of times this is because bass, especially in later summer, as you get a lot more pressure, they just tend to rise off the bottom a little bit more. You will find areas where there's bass on the, like close to the bottom, but they're 2 foot off the bottom. They're 3 foot off the bottom. So if you have a drop shot rigged with a 3 foot leader, you're gonna be presenting that plastic either in that bass's face or just above, and that is what you want. If you have a 1 foot leader, sometimes those bass just don't want to go down to feed. They want to go up to feed. Sometimes they'll come straight to feed. So sometimes leader length can make a big difference, especially in highly pressured situations, especially late in the summer. Excuse me. All right, guys, that's the drop shot. Those are 3 big tips. I hope you will catch more on a drop shot. If you guys want to watch my most recent video, you can click right here. If you want to check out the fin gloves, you can click right here. I will see you guys tomorrow.